I eat them every day. It's like one of my medicines.
People were dying.
And we said, if you could stand here and eat this pepper, we'll give you a free signed book. And it was just a special experience because people were standing there and like you're just facing the pepper. And there was one couple, there was a couple that came up, a young couple, and I said, well, you guys have to do the kiss of fire. You have to each eat half the pepper and then kiss. And they ate the pepper, and the girl she was a beast, and she downed it, and they're making out, and then she's like, let's do another one. And you could see the dude looked like he was about to shit his pants.
Ray Felix, Lance Mechanic, and Ron Perillo, and welcome to Bronx Heroes Comic-Con Live. Today's guest is Justin Fornal. Justin, how's it going?
It's going well, Ray. Nice to see you guys. Hello, Ron. Hey, Lance. How you guys feeling, man?
Are you surviving this crazy COVID-19 and then recent eruptions around the Bronx?
Sure. No, absolutely. Just staying vigilant, staying involved, while also trying to minimize contact with everybody. So it's a balancing act to be doing the right thing on many levels.
Absolutely. Tell me about it. I mean, you're a really interesting guy. You're all over the television. You've been on television for over a decade. You're an Emmy Award winner. I mean, where did that come from? What was that spark that really got you into, was it books that you read, or what was it that got you into this whole adventure, explorer, food connoisseur kick?
Sure. I mean, I think you as an artist can appreciate there's so many different mediums, from painting to writing music, to drawing, to performing. And, it started with filmmaking because I enjoyed doing all of those things. And film was a way to put everything together. You could make music, you could have dance numbers, you could have fight scenes, you could do all these different things you enjoy doing. You could talk about food, you could have humor, you could have serious. So it's just film in itself, and presenting things via film format was something that I fell in love with early. And I for a long time was always doing exploration and had the two separate. And I said, well, there might be a way to essentially get paid to do a show where I'm out in the field and doing exploration.
Absolutely.
I mean, you actually went to film school.
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to film. It was University of Pittsburgh, went for film and history, and that's kind of where a lot of things jumped off from,
Yeah, I mean, I saw a picture of you and that guy from True Blood. What was his name?
Joe Manganiello.
Yeah, Joe Manganiello. You guys are you actually did a first acting bit together.
Right. It's a very funny situation. Yeah, I was doing a film a long time ago called Tony. And Joe was opposite of me. I was his character Night Train, and he was his character Tony. And he we did a few scenes together. And I was at Pitt. He was at Carnegie Mellon, and he had another job to do, and he had to go off and do it. And then I never thought about the guy for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And then it was recently I saw an interview with him, and he was talking about Pittsburgh this and Pittsburgh that, and I said, how old is that guy? He's almost, we're close to the same age. He's an actor, and I just feel like Pittsburgh's not that big of a town. A lot of people know a lot of other people in town. I said, I wonder if I know this guy. And I'm looking at him. I said, oh, my God. I think he was in my student film 20 years ago.
That's amazing.
And so I went around the house. I'm looking for pictures. I'm looking for stills. I'm looking through old footage because I ended up playing a dual part. Once he dropped out, I'm like, all right, well, the only person I can really count on to get this done is myself. So I ended up playing two opposing roles, and they'd have to keep switching the camera, like when they've got someone playing twins. And so I had to find the old footage. So somewhere I have the tapes of him, and I believe that is the first anything filmed of Joe Manganiello is somewhere in my archives.
And like, hey man, how much you want for this?
Well, we've been in touch. He reached out to me on Instagram, and we've been going back and forth. And he, both of us kind of didn't remember it. And someone saw my post and sent it to him and said, oh, this is Justin Fornal. He says he had met you. And all of a sudden, I'm like, Joe Manganiello's following me on Instagram. That's interesting. And then we started bullshitting back and forth. So we've been in contact, and we have spoken a little bit about possibly doing an expedition to Armenia.
Nice.
To look for, kind of the some of the biblical legends of Noah's Ark and the Garden of Eden being there. And he's Armenian. He's part Armenian. So that was how that came up. He's like, oh, I really like your show on the Science Channel. Have you thought about doing an Armenia episode? So who knows? That could be
Yeah, who knows?
And it would just be a strange,
That'd be awesome.
full circle synergy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're beginning to actually, begin filming stuff again now.
Not really.
Here and
We've in the production world, we've designed a few things we're sending out, which it's basically any email you're sending to the network needs to say in the subject COVID-proof programming, or they're not even going to look at it. And our show is really largely a travel show. My show, Unexplained and Unexplored. It's an expedition where we're always in the field, and nobody wants us flying in there. So we're designing a few ideas that they're very interested in to hold us over, and then we're hoping sooner than later we'll start filming again in the field.
You could do like protests. What are you eating? What are you doing to survive on the streets during the protests?
Yeah, right, exactly. There's some pretty heavy rain going down. I don't know if you guys are getting where you're at.
It's happening here too. It's happening here too.
The little Eddie Rabbit, Love a Rainy Night.
Yeah. So what was the actual book that did you read, or character that inspired you to want to like travel and do all this? Because where does it come from?
The big inspirations for me, I always wanted to travel. I always wanted to be in different places and explore and experience different cultures. But a few books that had a really heavy impact on me. One was Robert Young Pelton's The World's Most Dangerous Places. And it's a book that if you've never read it before, it's just mesmerizing. And there's 5 different volumes of it. And every time he came out with it, it was really talking about hot zones and conflict zones, places like Iraq and Somalia, Afghanistan, even Papua New Guinea, Bougainville. And I'm reading this book and I'm like, wow, these are the places I want to be. And he really got into all it went through the history up until the recent conflicts. So it really helped you to wrap your head around why places that are in continual conflict are that way. And so it blew my mind, that book. And then it really became, okay, here's the places that I need to get to. He has individual stories he's written about each country, but it's like a big fat reference book. So you can pick it up, you can put it down, goes through the history of different weapons of war and where they're popular. So it's a book that the CIA uses, everyone uses it, and I do recommend it. It's just a great read to have.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that here a lot of countries, like, we don't really always get to study the history of other countries like here the way we should. Because I've heard stuff about the Dominican Republic, about differences there within the, groups within there, or like even how Iraq came to be.
Yeah.
Basically it's a place of just taking all these, kind of fighting, diverse groups and putting them all in the same country.
Yeah.
And it's like a history that we know about the places, but we don't know about the whole backstory of them.
Yeah. Yeah. When you get to know the players, every country on the planet is interesting. Every country has its own history and, who kind of took over when and who changed the history. Of course, we see that, in almost every country. And, but yeah, if you look at certain places where a collection of countries made the borders and really weren't even aware of kind of the silent borders that were there and why those worked for, say, hundreds, if not thousands of years. And then suddenly it's like, wait, no, half of our group is now on the other side of this country, but we never had these borders. So it's very interesting when you look at geography. That's my show is about maps. You look at just obviously even entire continents didn't really have any marked off borders that weren't natural, that weren't rivers or mountains. So it's really interesting to look at how countries are shaped and how in some ways it works, and in some ways it creates continual conflict.
Yeah, you're almost like a modern day Lewis and Clark, where you're like discovering, this part of the map is different from this landscape, and then you're searching for things. It's pretty wild.
It's really fun. Like I said, it's really fun to connect the dots throughout history. And I'll say the project I'm most excited about is we have a nonprofit called the History, Arts, and Science Action Network, which is myself and a few other academics. And it's really about getting in the field and doing the things that TV won't let us do. And we're doing a big project on the ethno-religious minorities of Iraq in particular. And it's just absolutely fascinating.
It's amazing.
Groups that have been there for thousands of years who have this such a rich, dynamic history tracing back all the way back, really, and it hasn't been well documented outside of the country. And so I can't wait to get there for it'll be about a month-long project in country. So that's, to me, hopefully something that, if not this year, unfortunately, just because of current, pandemic situation, that's the top number one project on our list right now.
So real quick,
Yes.
you're known for having these exotic foods, these fairs, these game dinners.
Yes.
What started that? What was the thing that really kicked that off?
Sure. My dog popped in to say hello. See if he can get his little face here. Hello.
He's huge, yeah.
So the game dinner came out of an interesting situation. I would always love exploring the culinary world of different cultures, different places, and as a traveler, I was always looking on the map during game season. Looking on the menus when it would be kind of the time of year when there would be game dinners or game menus at restaurants, when you'd have things like venison or snapping turtle and wild boar. But it was always fairly predictable, because in America, at a public restaurant, you can only serve farm-raised animals, farm-raised game. You can't have anything that would not have come from a farm. So even the wild boar, even the venison, it's always coming from a farm. And I said, it'd be really interesting to do.
Interesting.
If we trace all the way back to indigenous protein sources, we look at someplace like, the Northeast, where we're at right now. The indigenous people of this area would have eaten essentially there's different groups, and different groups would have had different spiritual beliefs as to what to eat and what not to eat, but there was someone eating everything, and everything from coyotes to foxes to bobcat to bear to raccoons, possums, snakes, martins. All these would have been eaten. Their glands would have been used, their fat, their tallow would have been used, their bones would have been used to make decorations or tools. And so I was at a Native American powwow in upstate New York, and I came across a booth that was just filled with pelts, hundreds and hundreds of animal pelts.
Is that the Thomas Wayne Rec area, that one?
I think so. This is 2010. So I always try to figure out where it was, because it was one of the best ones I ever went to. They had really interesting stuff. It just wasn't the usual, trinkets and stuff. And what do you do with the meat from these animals? I said, who's eating these animals? And he said, well, we give a lot of it back to the forest, to the animals. He goes, we use the pelts, but we'll eat the beaver, we'll eat the raccoon, but who's going to eat a coyote? Who's going to eat a fox? I said, I am. And I said, you had a Native American powwow. I said, you should be more respectful to use every part of the animal and not be wasteful. So he kind of laughed, and he said, well, I said, could I, mind if I give you a call? I'd love to come up and hunt with you. And so we stayed in contact, and that was it. I went up to upstate New York that October. This was in the summer. I went up that late October, made good friends with all these hunters and trappers, and said, look, if you're killing these animals, I would love to have a chance to do something with the meat so it doesn't get wasted. And 2010, we did our first Bronx Pipe Smoking Society small game dinner at the old 3rd Avenue Courthouse in the Bronx. And that was the beginning. And now we're on our 10th year coming up.
Right, exactly. And now you're at the Freeman home, right?
Yes.
You've moved around a bit. Yeah, and you're also a member of the Explorers Club.
Joined the Explorers Club in 2011, and that's it's a society of different scientists, field scientists, archaeologists, historians, all across the board, astronauts, and in our home base is right here in New York at 70th and Madison.
And that's how you got in, got into the the food shows, on TV.
That was kind of another a different route, something I had done since 2007, but I'd always really loved meeting people through food and exploring food. And, I moved to the Bronx, late 90s, early, around 2000, and just loved going to different neighborhoods and going to all the little mom and pop eateries and finding, what group is in this neighborhood? Oh, this is a Ghanaian neighborhood. Okay, there's got to be a few Ghanaian restaurants. I'd go to each restaurant, I'd take their menu home, I'd study it, I'd go back, I'd ask if they could make special dishes. So I started forming these really nice relationships with all different restaurant owners. And then I started filming a little show about it. And that was, went all the way from 2007 to really 2012, 2013, I was doing, food content, food writing, and I continued to do food writing after that. Worked on the Anthony Bourdain show, Parts Unknown. I helped produce the Bronx episode. And then from there went to Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern and did
that was a good one
as well.
That was a good one. And you were also on that Booze Maker show as well, right? In 2014.
So Booze Traveler is a show that was on Travel Channel. Guy Jack Maxwell would go around the world, basically, drinking his way around the world. It was a show that I wish I got the hosting for, but I came in as a producer and field producer for that, so I got to travel around and with those guys for a little bit, which was fantastic,
Oh yeah, what more to travel the world and drink? It's like,
yeah,
what more can you ask for?
Yeah, and the host just gets to show up, and everyone's waiting for him wherever you are, and they've got the special drink for him, and that's his big workout for the day.
Yeah, talking about workouts, tell us about swimming the Bronx River. I mean,
Sure.
you're the first guy to do that, right?
Yeah, no, the Bronx River swim really goes hand in hand with food because the last show I had about food was on the Cooking Channel, and when I didn't get renewed, I was kind of the heaviest I'd been. I'd always been athletic, but I was really getting paid. Once again, I was getting paid to go around and eat, and I wouldn't just have a shot. I wouldn't just have a bite. Wherever I went, I would eat everything and drink everything, and everybody knew that. So wherever I went, I wouldn't pay. People would be like, "No, you're eating for free. Sit down." And 5 days a week, I'd be just having these orgiastic feasts. So when I was done with the show, I said, Jesus Christ, I'm going to die. It's like, I got to get back fit. And so at the time, obviously member of the Explorers Club and wanted to be exploring. I said, well, I can't really afford to go anywhere. What am I going to do? So I looked at the local map, and I'd loved to kayak and had done every New York City waterway with my father on kayaks. And I said, well, maybe it's time to start swimming and get back in shape. So I called the Bronx Historical Society and I said, has anyone ever swum the entire Bronx River through the borough? And they said, well, not by choice. We don't know, but no one officially. If anyone did, they fell in.
I fell in when I was a kid, yeah.
And I said, okay, well, I'm going to do it this summer. And that summer, I lost 50 pounds, was in fighting shape, and, rocked that river. And came out in Clayson Point, and it was that was the beginning of a whole new chapter of my life, which was this long distance exploration swimming.
That may be the only way that people will be able to get in shape now with the health clubs closed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I've been swimming the Hudson River about once a week, and it's fantastic.
You better be careful, man. It's 800 times over the toxicity level.
So am I. So it's a match made in heaven.
And you swam in Scotland as well, right? What was that?
Yeah.
Like an 8 mile or 8 day?
Yeah, so that's the blueprint going forward. So of course, when television works, it's great. You get a lot of work done. You get decent pay. People get to enjoy your work. So that was to me the most exciting thing about having a TV show. Again, was not really being seen, but it was like, okay, we're going to get to do 8 episodes, in a short period of time, and then then you go home, but you'll get to travel. Everything's covered. So that was most exciting about it. But at the same time, you're fairly restricted in what content you get to do until you really get to trust somebody like Anthony Bourdain near the end of his career. He could say, we're doing Greenland, we're doing Papua New Guinea, I'm going to Congo. Well, Congo's dangerous. I'm going to Congo. I don't have that kind of leverage just because my show's a new show. Mm-hmm. So things like the swim were a blueprint of, well, how do we get paid and get a budget to do something we really want to do? And my favorite whiskey in the world is Laphroaig, which is from Islay, Scotland. I have some bottles in the other room. And this is their tartan behind me. This is the Laphroaig tartan.
Save me a shot.
Yeah, I'm sure. I just did a whiskey Zoom, and they sent me a bunch of bottles, which was the best part of doing it. I said, well, if we're doing this Laphroaig talk, I'm going to need you to probably send some stuff over. And so I had contacted them, and I really said, well, what would be an interesting swim to do for Laphroaig? And I looked, and I said, wow, imagine if I swam around the island they're on. It's 100 miles. And so I told the company, and I talked to a few other people, and they're like, you're definitely going to die if you do it. No one's ever done that. No one can do that.
For real.
And 2 other swimmers got involved, Chad Anderson and Johnny Mundell. And we got a small local whiskey bottle to sponsor us. And they basically covered our budget. We made a little documentary. You can see it, greatisleswim.com, and Isla is spelled Islay, called The Great Isla Swim. And we collected whiskey as we went from 8 distilleries, drank as we went, and then we auctioned off all the bottles for a local charity. So it was
right.
cool.
So at any point, were you drunk from drinking all that whiskey and swimming, or?
It's funny because I was not supposed to drink at all. You're supposed to, like, we're doing a deadly swim. I mean, the water is 51 degrees. Someplace you have 8-foot swells. It's very rough. It's a major swim. But you had to. I mean, everywhere you went, that is the culture. That is we're the whiskey swimmers, and of course, people expected us to drink whiskey. I don't think I got when we were doing it, I was certainly beat up, but I don't think I was wild at any point in terms of really feeling it, because your mind's so wound up to get the swim done, to get the whiskey, that partying wasn't really an option until the last night.
Right.
And with the new TV show, what was, like, of all the 8 episodes you did, was there like one that resonated with you in particular, like the most, or in terms of the subject matter? Absolutely.
To me, it was really important. I knew we had 2 internationals, and I really wanted to get back to Africa. In particular, I wanted to get to Somalia and Ethiopia and Eritrea. And I wasn't sure how I was going to do this, so I really pushed to do an episode about the Ark of the Covenant. And I knew, it's funny with TV that certain things resonate with certain audiences, and of course, we were told, well, Egypt is going to resonate. People get Egypt. They get Egypt. They get ancient Greece.
It's always covered, though. It's covered to death. You have
exactly. Well, that's my point. Was
travel.
I want to talk about Somaliland and these mountains and this ethnic group. I want to, talk about stories that aren't being told. Once again, it's more of a season 2 thing. For season 1, they want to be like ancient pharaohs.
Right. It's like you're a creative person, so you're like a game changer to television and travel and exploration, because, like you said, you can have a unsolved mystery, Egypt, aliens, Egypt, food, Egypt. Everything is Egypt. It's just like, but you're Somalia. People will just remember soldiers being hung from bridges on fire.
Right, and that's my goal is with places like Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, is to change that narrative and say these places have incredible histories, and you're only thinking about what's going to, and that's I'll tell you straight up, when I was producing for Booze Traveler, and I said, I don't remember who it was, if it was the network or the production company, but I remember having a meeting, and I did all this research on Ethiopia, and I said, you have to go to Ethiopia. It is this ancient kingdom. This has not been colonized. This has not been conquered. We need to tell this story. And I remember one woman on the phone, and she's like, well, it's a great idea, but when people think of Ethiopia, I still think of those kids with the stomachs, the starving kids with the sunken stomachs.
Yeah, Live Aid.
I said, are you out of your fucking mind? I said, you're thinking about a National Geographic issue from like 1982? I said, that's a disgusting thing for you to say. It's like I wanted to quit my job right then and there. I was so pissed off at just the way that people are so comfortable stating their ignorance about other places.
It's a very shallow.
Yeah.
For them to think that way.
It's just baffling.
People wear like a badge of pride how ignorant they are in this country. It's not everyone. We have a lot of intelligent people as well, but we have, with Trump in office, he's kind of like giving license to people saying, yeah, I'm stupid and proud.
Right.
So.
Well, that's one thing with television you have to be very careful with, is a lot of times it'll be geared towards what they think the least intelligent viewer is.
Right.
So you're never really playing to the smartest watcher in the room. You're playing to the desires and the viewpoints of the least intelligent or the least enlightened viewer, and that can be a very challenging thing. And I was very cautious with my show when I was handed script or anything that was being said to be very careful with not only what was being said, but how it was being stated. I recall things when we talk about either Columbus or conquistadors coming to America, and in some instances it was being described as this this vacant land, this untamed land, this unexplored land. I said, I'm not saying any of this shit. And I said, I'm not in any way am I going to compliment Columbus. I said, I'm going to speak in a very historical way where we have all this populations happening everywhere in the world, and this group came here to profit.
Right.
You could say whatever. They might have been great navigators, but this is a mission. This is a state mission to find places, people, things to exploit. That's why a government would fund it. You know, it's like, oh, well, we're not going to send you to Mars just to take a picture. We're sending you to Mars because we're going to see if we can really make something work for us. And if there's people there, well, we're going to have to negotiate or take what they have from them. So, you know, I was just very careful because it was all in the fine, you know, with any of this stuff, depends who's writing it. It's in the fine print. It gets put in front of you, and you got to really take your time and make sure that you're going to be happy with what your voice is saying. Because at the end of the day, it's your voice in your face representing this information, you know, and that's a big responsibility.
And as a cultural detective, you know, people are looking to you for those answers, and you want to represent it.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the way they've always, you know, from the time we're in school and you're, you know, told about the legend of Columbus discovering the undiscovered country.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
there's a few really interesting articles about that and how Columbus was really a footnote in history until Italian Americans were being had this heavy prejudice against them, and then he kind of was reemerged as this Italian hero, and then they really tried to sell kind of the Italian narrative in America as, hey, we're really kind of, you know, we made this whole thing possible, so you should probably give us jobs. So I've read a few very interesting academic pieces about really the marketing behind Columbus getting his holiday, becoming this big, larger than life character that is not part of American pride, but a part of Italian pride as well. And it's a relatively new, you know, thing.
Yeah. When did that, when did that start happening, when they started pushing that?
I think just look up the history of Columbus Day. I'm sure it'll pop right up. It's kind of like the history of the color pink being associated with femininity as opposed to masculinity. You know,
right.
Historically, pink had been a very masculine color. Even like the color magenta was created for Napoleon when he won the Battle of Magenta. And there's Magenta Street in the Bronx, which was named after that. It was some of the great textile makers were tasked with creating a new color for Napoleon, and they came up with magenta. George Washington had like an all baby pink onesie that was like almost like something you'd imagine like Amadeus Mozart wearing. And it wasn't until like the 1940s when, you know, and even if we think about dresses too, like little boys would wear pink dresses. Like that's what they would wear. Right, and then it was either a Sears catalog. It was a catalog came out where in that catalog, all the boys' stuff was blue, all the girls' stuff was pink, and that completely
shifted. Wow.
Game over.
Crazy. So tell us about these fabrics. You're also known for getting these exotic fabrics. You mentioned the curtains in the back. I also know that you had a certain type of fabric that was made out of tree bark, and you guys are doing suits, making suits out of tree bark.
That's became a bit of an obsession. Is this collecting obscure, really not collecting, but collecting and documenting rare and obscure textiles from around the world, and certainly things that are made out of materials other than cotton and wool, and dyed with I love the idea of, and I'm surrounded by goodies, so I'm sure there's something I can grab to show you, but using natural things from the environment for dyeing textiles. So we did a big expedition to Oaxaca, Mexico, where we see these ancient Aztec dyes, Mixteca dyes, Zapoteca dyes, and things from, you know, small cochineal, which are these tiny little insects that they crush to make red, the pura sea snail, which they use to make purple, different nuts, fruits. And then we did an expedition to Uganda where we took a long route to get to the Buganda people, who their traditional fabric is made from the inner bark of the matuba tree, which is basically, it's a ficus. And they take the bark from this tree, and they'll hit it with these mallets until it gets bigger and bigger and thinner. And I have pieces here. I think I might have the largest piece that's in America. And it's still, if you open it up, the whole room smells like cedar. You open that up and you just have this giant piece of bark cloth. And but what I found most fascinating, which you might find fascinating as well, Ray, as a bit of a macabre soul, is it's the funeral cloth. It's the cloth of death. And this is something that would be given if the Kabaka was to come to our house, to the town, we'd all put on our bark cloth. But also if someone dies, we'd wear a bark cloth. And the person who passes is wrapped in 7 pieces. And it means a lot to be the person who purchases one of those pieces and gives it to the family of the deceased. And so where this all comes into play that's fascinating is that witches and sorcerers wear this as well, because it is the cloth of the dead. So if you were to come and see me, if I was a warlock and we wanted to contact your dead great-grandparents, I would put on the bark cloth, and I'd put on a bark cloth veil. And as I'm summoning them, I can see in the veil into the world of the dead. And it's almost like a television screen to the afterworld. So there's just such a rich, beautiful, kind of delightfully dark culture behind the bark cloth. And so I had a tuxedo made from it and made a veil. But it's a very special thing.
And you also were talking about like religion, cultural things, death. Like you're very heavily into the studies of voodoo as well, exploring that. And what sparked your interest in that? I mean, I remember you were buried last year, buried alive in a coffin. I mean, tell us about this.
Well, it's, I grew up when I was a child, I was brought up in a Catholic church, and it just where the church we went to was nice with members of the community there, but there was no real joy to it. There was no involvement in it. It would be kind of just this monotone thing you'd go and do, and a lot of times it'd be me and my dad, and we'd be kind of doing the thing, and it was something more like, hey, there's my friend from class. But our priest was kind of an asshole, he was just kind of this really grumpy dude, never was like, call it what it is, man. It's just, I never felt any attachment, and I went all the way to confirmation, and I was fascinated with the idea of scripture. I was fascinated with the stories in the Bible, but I felt no connection spiritually to the situation at all.
The dogma, yeah.
Yeah, and then, once everything came, but I was always interested in all these other things where I was like, oh, look, it looks like they're having a lot more fun in voodoo. You know what I mean? It looks like it felt more, aesthetically, felt more of who I am. And the idea of things could be done in the cemetery, and rhythm and passion and food and liquor and sexuality, all within the span of religion, as opposed to, well, here's a list of things you can't do. Here's a list of things that you can't think about, and all these rules, where voodoo was like, no, there's death, there's life, there's sex, there's eating, there's all these things, and there's all these different spirits that represent them, and they're all important. There's not just good and evil. And so that's what really fascinated me about voodoo and all these other really African-based religions, things that came over. And from there, it's just any ceremony, any ritual I can be part of, whether it's, going to a friend's Passover Seder or celebrating an Eid celebration with my Islamic friends. I love ceremony, and I love ritual, and I love being part of those things. And people are like, oh, you're celebrate this, are you that? I'm like, I'm nothing. I'm a student. I'm a student of the world, and I love to be part of it and to witness the joy that is within ritual.
You're following your bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say.
Something I jump in,
Yeah.
Have you documented your work? I mean, traveling, have you perhaps written this in some sort of journal, or maybe come out with a...
I've written extensively for National Geographic, and I've written for the Explorers. I mean, a lot of different places, but if just justinfornal.com, and you click on the article link, you'll see a big collection of my written work. There's 2 brand new ones up there. One I did about witchcraft in Tanzania, and another I did about the Hadza tribe, which is one of the oldest tribes on our planet. And it's 2 really just nice, slow read, climb in there and...
That's amazing. Okay, I can't wait to read it. I was just looking at your website now. Tell us about the Taxidermy Tuesdays. I mean, that seems to be very interesting, what you're doing, and you can tell us a little bit about the pipe that you have there behind you.
Yeah, so it's just something my friend Divya is hosting. She's a dear friend and taxidermist, and she her and I have been making pipes together for the last 5 years for the game dinner. So here's a pipe made out of a pheasant, where there's actually a tobacco pipe and you can hold the pheasant by the feet and smoke it. And we have a bunch of other ones around my office here. And so she does a show online every Tuesday. It's Taxidermy Tuesday, and she talks about everything from oddities to different ways to taxidermy animals and style and, just funky, fun stuff.
I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with death. We're in denial of death for sure, at least in the U.S. Being comfortable with death doesn't mean you don't take it seriously. Death is a natural part of the life cycle. It exists whether I'm here or not. It makes me feel humbled. It makes me feel like it makes me know my place. And I think that is the part that I find beautiful.
I think when you pass away, you'll be taxidermed as well, like they're doing in
come
LA.
Up, man. It's so, the one that came up recently was one of our partners for the dinner is Trapper Bill. And Trapper Bill is really like,
awesome.
If you've ever seen Gangs of New York, the character Bill the Butcher. He's Bill the Butcher mixed with John Wayne with hands the size of catcher's mitts. And his hands are so massive, and they're just dense. And it's like when you shake his hand, you're just shaking this paw. So I called him up. He's an advancing age. And I said, hey, Bill, I got kind of a wild idea. And I said, what do you think about, I said, you're not going to die soon, but when you do die, and he's part Native American. And I said, I see Lenny Lenape. And I said, Bill, what do you think about let me take your hands to Divvy afterwards? I think a lot of people would appreciate seeing them every year at the game dinner after you're dead. And he says, yeah, I don't think we're going to do that. Native American culture, I got to be all in one piece or I'm not going where I got to get to.
Yeah, he doesn't want to go out like Che Guevara, losing his hands, It's like,
it's just so fun. So what we did decide to do is as soon as we can go, I don't want to, post-COVID, I'm going to go and make a big plaster cast of his hands. Then we can pass that around the dinner and people can do what they will with them.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, use it as a pipe.
Exactly. Yeah, he's got tattoos, so we might put some tattoos on there, or just decorate them very interestingly. There might be I see it like in a box, like on satin, like in a, like a porcelain box, right. Something like you'd see, like made of like with saint bones in it or something. So we'll do some weird shit with Bill's hands. Don't worry about that.
Definitely. That's cool, man. Yeah, I could see you doing like a sand cast with that, like an old school sand cast. Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. So what's new? What's next for Justin Fornal and your explorer's life?
We had two really great things that were ready to go. And of course, the least of the world's problems with the pandemic is our expeditions. But I planned to do the first swim from Canada to Scotland. From Canada to Greenland this summer across the Nares Strait. It's like a 25-mile swim through sub-freezing waters. And from Pym Island to a place called Etah. So if you want to look at it on a map, it's Etah. What a crazy part of the world. It is considered.
That's not that 12-year-old on a ship, is it?
Yeah, exactly. And so we were going to go there, and then I knew time was getting here quicker. I had to do it in May because there's an ice bridge that's there until probably June 15th. June 15th is usually when it breaks, around that time. So all the ice in the Arctic is up there, and beneath it is clear water. So I could have swam across without having to dodge all the big icebergs and such.
Right.
And as soon as, we knew it was coming quick, and I said, okay. Then all of a sudden, we got this little pandemic start to pop off, and I said, I don't think we're going to get up there to do the swim this year. So we had planned, even with the pandemic, to go up in August and do a scout. Go out there, and we'd be launching from one of the northernmost villages on the planet, which is called Kanuk, which is Qaanaq. And this is ancient Inuit people up there. They've been there for 4,000 years. And this is a group of people who have been, the first few thousand years they were there, they were surviving using just sea mammals. Sea mammals and fish. Their bones, their boats were made from the skin of whales, from bones. Absolutely amazing, fascinating people. And so we're going to launch from there and then go the 50 miles up to Etah and go across and do like some test swims. But there's the writing's on the wall. They have no cases there. Nobody wants a bunch of assholes coming from New York and wiping out the village. You know what I mean?
Right, of course.
And August sounds like it's far away. August is right around the corner now.
corner.
Man. So
Yeah.
we're probably going to have a hard conversation about that tomorrow, just my team and I.
Yeah.
And the other big project we're going to do is a project about the history of mezcal in Oaxaca, Mexico. Of course, mezcal being the, a spirit very much like tequila, but is, made from a different plant and much more of a rustic flavor, much smokier, and something that's gotten very popular over the last few years and is really at almost the tipping point, because anyone
Next new thing.
Yeah, anyone who's been producing it is being bought out right now by like the big 5 liquor companies.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so we want to go really deep, really into, certainly at the bush, it's not called the bush down there, but to the really far areas where people are producing it in ancient ways, unusual ways, different ways. Like, they have ones where they put the chicken in, they sacrifice the chicken and put it in a still, and the fumes go through the chicken, which is more common. But then there's other ones where they're fermenting it in cow hides as opposed to big wooden barrels. So we want to really get out there and tell the story of mezcal, let the story of mezcal tell itself. And a lot of these villages in Oaxaca are separated by footpaths. These are footpaths that were taken really up to 50 years ago. There weren't really many cars in the area at all. People were going around by donkey and donkey cart. So we're going to kind of reopen these footpaths, and it'll be the Mezcal Trail. So it's kind of reopening the Mezcal Trail so people can go and explore Oaxaca by foot and kind of drink their way from village to village.
They'll be crawling by the end.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, basically, when we were talking about, religions, I've always found it interesting how like almost everything, basically there's a story before every religion, basically, like, for example, even with Christianity, not just the origins in Judaism, but paganism, and how all these different things became, like the things we associate with one religion came from other religions and other rituals. And I remember it was like so shocking to me when I would first start hearing about that, like how,
very true.
But, that's, even how Christmas came from, I think
it's German.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a great book called Pagan Christmas, which is one of my favorite books. Pagan Christmas. It goes into it just goes into everything, and it's
a great book. It's
so great. It goes into recipes for like nasal snuff that were from like the 1500s. That was like the Christmas snuff, and so many things were psychotropic Christmas tobaccos, baccies that were like Santa Claus's. They like just all this amazing stuff going back to like ancient shamanism and how a lot of the idea of the wild man of the north, Santa Claus, kind of came from a lot of that. It's a mixture of, you've got St. Nicholas, this saint and this kind of very cardinal-esque figure, and then you have the wild man of the north, which is this idea of this either Siberian or Slavic shaman, and he's just this hairy man covered in moss, and how those two things kind of came together. So it's just...
We just reminded me, we need to get that done.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we were doing a book.
The Krampus book, right?
Yeah, Krampus book, where Santa Claus is very... We as Krampus, Santa Claus is as we imagined him.
Yeah. I mean, you could just have a slogan on the cover of him saying, "You better be good."
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
We were on the cusp of something, because that whole Krampus thing exploded the same time we were working on it. It was in the ether, There was even
of course.
Grant Morrison even did this comic book on Santa Claus as well, as a warrior, and I was like, man, this is like right up like exactly what we were doing. It's just like, but one last question before we wrap it up.
Sure.
I was so fascinated reading about Nat Turner's skull. Like, how did you come upon that expedition?
I got a call from my friend Bengt Anderson, who at the time was a producer at National Geographic, and he said, "Hey, we're doing a documentary about Nat Turner, famous leader of the most successful slave rebellion in American history. Do you want to come on as a producer?" And I said, "Sure." So I was sitting at this desk I'm at right now. It was a Saturday night, and I said, "Oh, this is cool. I got a new job next week. Let me make sure." And I knew about Nat Turner. It's a familiar figure to me, but I said, let me dive down the rabbit hole. So I poured myself a tall glass of whiskey and just going through all my stuff, and saw that his skull had been missing. No one really knew where his body was either, but there was this idea that his skull, he was hanged in 1831 after he had been, captured. And the idea that he was decapitated after, and his skull was kind of made its way through history.
Right,
And so I found some little nuggets, some little breadcrumbs, and I went in the first day, which is like a Tuesday, and I said, hey, guys, I'm happy to get started. And by the way, we're going to find and return that Turner skull to the descendants before we're done with this film. And it was the last day of the last edit of the doc, and I finally got the gentleman who had it to agree to release the skull to us and to the family. So we flew out to Gary, Indiana. It was in possession of the former mayor of Gary, Indiana, Richard Gordon Hatcher. And he returned it to the family, and they gave me all the paperwork, and I said I'll drive it down to the Smithsonian where it was getting tested for DNA. So it was myself and the skull made our way across America back to New York and then down to D.C.
That is pretty impressive. Laying his ghost to rest finally after all these
Well, hopefully
years.
he'll be laid to rest before the end of the year. His family's doing a Nat Turner Day sometime in October, and I said, look, all the DNA has been taken. We can make a cast, but there's no reason for the Smithsonian to still be in possession of these remains.
Right.
What do you think about entombing it on that weekend? And they said, that's a great idea. What a great way to have closure before the end of 2020. So right now we're all discussing where would be a suitable place, a safe place, because as they had said, all the property where the rebellion took place is in Southampton, Virginia. And there's history markers, and it's still so touchy. He killed, his party killed 51 individuals, obviously slave-owning families and people around the community. They were trying to work their way to a big depot of weapons to free everyone. And it's still so touchy down there that the historic signs that you see like on the side of the highway, this is where Ben Franklin took a piss. The Nat Turner ones are constantly shot at or knocked over.
Really?
So they said in terms of entombing the remains, they want to make sure it's someplace where it's not going to be bothered.
Right. It has to be like maybe private,
private, but also you want people who see him as really one of the first civil rights heroes in American history. The first battle of the Civil War, many have said.
Yeah, exactly.
To have a chance to visit his grave and to pay homage and to find inspiration for positive works.
That's amazing. Guys, you have any other questions before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I have a question. How do you convince someone to step outside their norm? Because you're so world traveled. How do you have someone who's afraid? A lot of people are afraid of change. They're in their routine. How do you try to convince someone to live a little bit? To find some inspiration for them to just break that monotony of their everyday. Yeah.
I think one thing is give them a good health scare.
Mm.
Yeah, we're gonna take a look at that tumor, but this might be it. And all of a sudden they're like, oh fuck, I've been eating hamburgers and watching the same Netflix shit for the last 3 years. Jesus, I should have went to China. I should have done this. I should have,
So true.
Also, I think writing is a powerful tool because it allows you to slowly ingest and be in the driver's seat, where TV is fun, but I feel like TV is more for you to sit down and be the voyeur. But writing itself is giving someone the idea of the scents and smells of the market. It's so transporting that it's like, oh shit. And also to give them my inner monologue of why I'm doing it really gives them a chance to think as I'm thinking and be like, okay, this is why I would want to go to an interesting place and eat something that people might think is unusual or gross. And here's the satisfaction that he's taking from it. Certainly a lot of that was in my food television work where I'd be talking about unconventional foods, but I'd put it in a very romantic language. And I'd really elevate it as opposed to shows like Bizarre Foods or whatever, where they might be like, I'm going to eat this crazy thing. Here I go.
Right.
And it's a dare.
Right. It's like a little notch above X Factor, but it's just like they're not really respecting the culture or giving you the history of it.
But now like the stigma, especially now with like the wet markets and
Hey, I want some bat.
Yeah.
They said it was not connected. That was that was an early thing, you know.
For the record, well, that's been the joke. The whole game dinner joke is everyone's like, oh, so you're doing the dinner this year? You better not do bad. Better not do bad. So
Hey, I had a
we'll
rat.
do a
I had
play
a,
on
I had
that.
a muskrat.
Yeah. We won't serve that, obviously, but
Yeah.
I think it's good. It might be a fun chance to put a little something in the menu just to make people say,
Maybe
wait,
that's
what
next
is
year's
that
pipe.
right there?
Maybe the next year's pipe is a bat. You got to find a bat. That'll be the pipe.
Yeah.
I think people tend to concentrate more on too much on the negative, where you seem like a very positive person. You're excitable, and I think people get stuck in negativity,
Yeah.
especially with watching, the news. It's just the same negative comments, but,
Dude,
what you're doing is trying to get people excited about something, whether it's
get
food
people-
or...
Yeah. No, get people excited and bring people together and take down the walls and don't listen to all the negativity being fed to you and the narratives being fed to you. You really have to make up your own mind of what you feel as a human being. And when you do that, then it's hard to be distracted and it's hard to be deterred from your path, and if you're going to be positive and love all people and love all places, you got to be strong enough to block out the bullshit, and say, am I going to feel like I have to be with this group or with that group because of comfort or shared experience, or am I going to go outside the box and meet everybody and form opinions for myself? And it's worked well for me, and everywhere I go, I meet new people, and they're always happy to meet me because they feel a genuine curiosity with no fear attached. And once people can recognize that in you, the door's open, and the world is a big, beautiful place.
Yeah, because especially in this country, we have so much tribalism, and I'm pretty certain, that's not just, this country.
Right, not at all, yeah. Yeah.
That's human nature. That's human nature if you think about it.
It really is. It really is.
I think what's happening now with the riots and stuff, people are really like for it. Some people are against it, but the reality is that is essentially what we are and who we are. I mean, we have intellect, we have lap of luxury, but the reality is we're still barbarians deep inside. Covered by distracted by color televisions and like all these programs and the internet. But we're still barbarians, and we still survive like barbarians, in some way. I mean, we're almost like well kept, but at the same time, once the electricity goes off, which that's the next shoe to drop, it's like
I would say the internet. If that ever went down, that would be it for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing, but I'm kind of happy for it. People need to wake the fuck up, and I think this is the awakening.
Well,
I mean, you'd be amazed. Like, you can take away my liberty, but not my Netflix.
All right.
to me, you can take away everything, just don't take away spicy peppers and curry goat, and I'm good to go.
Oh my God, that reminds me of I was just telling you earlier. It's been like 2011. We did New York Comic Con, and promoting the culinary adventures of your show, and then we had the comic book, and we were giving we had like 75 people that ate peppers without water just to get a free copy.
Oh, it was a Scotch bonnet pepper, and which
Scotch bonnet pepper.
I ate them every day. It's like one of my medicines.
People were dying.
And we said, if you could stand here and eat this pepper, we'll give you a free signed book. And it was just a special experience because people were standing there and like you're just facing the pepper. And there was there was a couple that came up, a young couple, and I said, well, you guys have to do the kiss of fire. You have to each eat half the pepper and then kiss. And they ate the pepper, and the girl she was a beast, and she downed it, and they're making out, and then she's like, let's do another one. And you could see the dude looked like he was about to shit his pants. Looked like he was really on the verge of
He's like, I got to run to the bathroom.
releasing his bowels. And so she eats the second half, and she puts it in his mouth, and it just pushed him over the edge.
We must have that on tape somewhere. Somebody filmed it.
It was fantastic. It was fantastic. So we certainly see he wasn't built like her, So hopefully they're still either caught up to him or they didn't last because he could not hang with her.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a nightmare version of that old Pepper commercial for Dr. Pepper.
Thanks for coming on, man. It's always great to see you. Hopefully we'll see each other in person soon.
I will look forward to
Thanks
it.
for joining us.
And
Just sending prayers and support to everybody who's fighting a battle for equality, and you know, all we can do is support and be on the front lines and do great things, and hopefully also this pandemic will pass in a reasonable time and we can all get back together and have fun and get funky.
yeah.
So,
All right.
great
Awesome.
talking, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ram. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Ray. And I look forward to seeing everybody again soon.